Hi there, A pushers. Here we are. I want to go through a few notes so that we can kind of understand where we're going to end up with the with the rest of period 3. When you are coming to class, this is the last thing we talked about on this slide. And when you are coming to class, we're going to talk about how we had this very weak government through the Articles of Confederation, and it really wasn't enough to do what needed to be done. And so we have to draft a constitution. So we're going to talk a lot in class about how we get a constitution passed, what is in it, and how it's really going to shake out. We're going to talk about our first president, George Washington, how he tried to really kind of stay out of this and stay neutral, how Alexander Hamilton was very formative in the Constitution, and we're going to go through some of these ideas. When we're in class, we'll talk about what the creation of the U.S. Bank and all of that was. So what I really I want you to understand today, how political leaders are trying to parties are starting, political parties are starting, and it becomes this us versus them mentality. Let me read so I don't have to move my thing. Political leaders in the 1790s took a variety of positions on issues such as the relationship between the national government and the states, that's an important one, economic policy, and the balance between liberty and order. This formation of the political parties, most significantly the Federalists, led by Alexander Hamilton, and the Democratic Republicans, led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to talk about all of that in class. What I want you to understand is after the Anti-Federalists, there becomes this party known as the Democratic Republicans. Now, George Washington sets a precedent, and he only takes a two 4-year term according to the Constitution, that he had to be elected, but he only runs 2 times, and runs really one more time. He's elected twice, and he becomes the president for 8 years. He has set a precedence, and now we're going to have our next elected president in John Adams. Well, what John Adams had done is kind of, he looked back, and in fact he realized this was probably the worst mistake of his presidency, but he passed something called the Alien and Sedition Acts. Now, this is all having to do with basically the friction between political parties, because one side is saying something and the other is trying to refute it. I think we know this very well. If we watched any of the debates in the recent time, you can always tell that somebody is going to say something or do something against another political side. So the Alien and Sedition Acts are these series of acts that are passed through Congress. I have to say, this came through Congress, and John Adams signs them into law. And it's really kind of the hopes that he would win re-election. The first one is called the Alien Acts, and sometimes it's known as the Naturalization Acts. The Alien Act basically gave the president any power to name an alien, and when I say an alien, I'm talking about an immigrant who was not legally a citizen in the United States. And they could order them out of the country at any time. Like pretty much for any reason, the president could say, you're out, go back to France, go back to Britain, just get out and leave. Well, you can about imagine how well that would happen. You can imagine how well it goes down now, right? So during a time of war, a president could order anybody who he felt was like a traitor or an alien out of the country. Also, the Alien Act raised the residency time. Before, you had to live in the country to be considered a citizen for 5 years. Under President Adams, that went to 14 years. So it increased the residency time to become a United States citizen from 5 to 14 years. The Sedition Act was probably actually even worse. The Sedition Act, and I hope you watch that little video that I embedded. It's only like a 2-minute video. It won't take very long. But the Sedition Act basically made it unlawful, made it illegal for editors or people to write things that were unflattering or use their free speech against an elected official, namely John Adams. So the Sedition Act that said that basically you could be tried, you could be imprisoned, you could be fined if you speak out against the government, namely the president. We just passed a Bill of Rights. We just went through a constitutional convention. The first right, the first one, our Bill of Rights, the freedom of speech. In fact, this should also bring you back to another idea that happened in 1735, the John Peter Zenger trial. Truth isn't libel. Now John Adams is starting to say, no, you can be arrested for that. And that's really causing a lot of people to move away from John Adams, even if they didn't like him. Now they're looking at him as more of like a tyrant and a kind of a disciplinary king almost. And so in response, the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions are passed. This is Jefferson and Madison. You can see this picture of Thomas Jefferson. He's the one there on the right. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison basically said in protest of the Alien and Sedition Acts, because this was making Adams look good and other people like Jefferson look, well, not as good because his opponent couldn't look good, right? So the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions were passed that basically said, the Kentucky resolution said that the federal government couldn't extend its powers outside of what the Constitution granted them. So the Constitution, when it was developed, said that, remember the difference in federalism between state and federal governments? The Constitution basically said, according to Jefferson and Madison and the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, or the Kentucky resolution, that the Constitution didn't even grant this power that the federal government could do outside the states. So like Adams didn't even have that ability to do that. The Virginia resolution said that the states can intervene if they didn't think a federal law was constitutional. Now, this is a really important idea. Think about this. If this is now saying, and it makes total sense coming from Jefferson, right, and Madison, it makes a lot of sense that Jefferson would be pro-state because Jefferson was very much about what's the best for the states. However, think about this. If the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions said that the state can declare a law unconstitutional, and actually the federal government can't extend their powers beyond what the Constitution says, like in this case of the Sedition Act or the Alien Act, then what is that implication going to mean? Think about this by the time we get to the Civil War. That means that there might be a federal law, but each state can go around it. That is going to have some really strong implications. If you can see the writing on the wall, you can see what kind of a road we're heading down. So that's actually where I want to stop for the day. It's just a little bit that I needed to get through. When we come to class, we're going to really dig into Hamilton's financial plan, the Bill of Rights, the couple of slides before this, but I do want you to understand what was going on when these parties are being formed and how the relationship is developing in the political sense in the United States. All right, till next time, bye.